preparing job interviews using AI, and if you intend to build a story bank, a common piece of advice you'll hear will be to prepare 5 to 6 of your best stories. In my experience, this is a dead end if you want to pass job interviews with high-performing companies. The first reason I'm going to provide you here would be something that's quite common in interviews with high-performing companies, that is your interviewers to be taking notes. And the core reason why they're taking notes would be to confront those notes with their colleagues, either during the interviewing process, either at the end of all your interviews. And the easiest way someone would reject you from a job interview is when they spot that you overused your stories. Okay, you may come across as not sufficiently experienced, or you may come across as overusing intentionally your best stories, or you may come across as simply unprepared for your job interview. So this is something that interviewers do listen for, and is quite a common reason for rejection if you repeat your stories. The second reason I'm going to present you with here is the technical approach, the technical proof that 5 or 6 stories is not enough to pass these job interviews. If you think of what are the most interesting core behaviors you'd want to prepare on for your job interview, probably top of the list will be your ability to deliver. Okay? Your ability to deliver, can you do the job, is a question that any important stakeholder in the interview process will test you against. When you prepare around how do you deliver, it's impossible that you only prepare one story. This will come across multiple times throughout your interview, so you need 1 to even more stories prepared to showcase your ability to deliver results. Okay? Another very common question, around very common behavior you're going to get asked in your job interviews would be around conflict. Right? Conflict means different things to different types of roles: conflict, influence, mediation, these sort of things. They're going to need at least 1 more stories. My best client prepared 2 or 3 stories again on this topic as well. Then you're going to need a time when you were inventive, so to exhibit some innovation, some learning maybe, this is again 1 or 2 stories. Maybe you'd want to also pitch how you deal with ambiguous situations, complex decision making. Maybe you did a prioritization, maybe you had to work under stress, maybe you had to deliver something using your bias for action, and you can easily see how the variety of your stories builds up beyond these 5 or 6 stories. So going into an interview with a high-performing company, you're going to have between 6 rounds for the more mid-level roles, so to speak, up to 14 is most I've heard in the past 2 years. So going into an interview with 14 rounds, you can imagine that having a story bank with 5 or 6 stories will not cut it, right? And the third reason, probably the most important actually, of all these 3 why 5 or 6 stories is not enough, is because whenever I role play with my customers, I often see this behavior. Hey Dan, but the AI said 5 or 6 stories would be enough. And then we start role playing. I role play, the most commonly asked questions. And they realized, hey, you know what, I don't have a great story for this. So basically my point here is that it's not as if candidates don't have more stories. In my experience, even freshers can come up with more stories than that. But you don't feel the pressure, you don't understand the need to come up with these best stories. So the moment you role play a little bit, the moment you look a little bit at the most commonly asked types of questions on the core behaviors, right? You realize that you'll need a variety of stories. And a quick tip here, how do you come up with more stories, would be to zoom in and zoom out of your most significant achievements, because oftentimes those would fit into multiple behaviors, and you may call those separate stories because ultimately you want to pitch them the best you can for the question you're going to get asked. So long story short, you need far more than 5 or 6 stories. What is a good number of stories you need for a job interview? If you want some professional advice, 15 to 25 stories. And the most important question, the most important challenge for you would be to revise each of these stories at least 3 times, right? A revision could be structuring them in the STAR format. Another one could be restructuring them to flow, better, to flow better for clarity of thought and to make sense. Another one could be with dramatization. Another one would be with introducing some interesting metrics. Maybe you'd want to add a bit of introduction. Maybe you'd want to reverse your star answers, and there's plenty of choice for this. But the core thing is that you would need between 15 and 25 stories revised at least 3 times. At least this is the formula that works best according to my experience. So I hope you found this useful, and thank you very much for watching.